Father who lost his daughter on a train finds her 20 years later. Losing your child is arguably a parent's worst nightmare, and losing your parents is definitely a child's worst nightmare. Sadly, that's exactly what happened to this particular family back in 1999. Thanks to new state-of-the-art tech, however, this family has been amazingly reunited with their prodigal daughter 20 years later, proving to us, and the world, that miracles do exist. The harrowing story began one day when Viktor Moisenko was returning by train to his hometown of Asipoviki, Belarus, from a trip to Minsk. Viktor had brought his 4-0-year-old daughter, Yulia, with him so that she could experience the wonderful world of traveling. Viktor and Yulia were headed home to loving wife and mother, Ludmila. Ludmila was eagerly awaiting her husband and her daughter's return. After all, she had missed them terribly while they had been away in Russia. Viktor was happy, but also extremely tired from spending the past few days with a rambunctious child in a foreign city. The ride back to his hometown was only a short 60 miles, and so Viktor thought it would be perfectly fine to rest his eyes for a little bit. Viktor and Yulia were alone in the train compartment, and Viktor had no reason to believe any harm would come to Yulia. What was meant to be a light nap, however, turned into a deep sleep. The loud sound of the train whistle letting everyone know they had arrived in Asipoviki woke Viktor up. But when he opened his eyes, he did not see Yulia. He started frantically calling her name, up and down the train, trying to find her. Soon, Viktor contacted the police to tell them that his daughter was missing. Ultimately, the police were not able to find Yulia, and Viktor and Ludmila were absolutely devastated. They had lost their child, and with each passing day without her there, they feared the worst. Although it has been 20 years since Yulia was separated from her father, she still recalls some of the details. Yulia remembers two young people, a couple, taking her out of the cabin with her father and switching trains somewhere between Minsk and Asipoviki. Yulia also remembers being on this next train for a very long time. Now, she knows that the couple who snatched her away from her father were actually hiding from the police for another crime they had committed earlier. According to Yulia, the following weeks were a blur, although she remembers being moved from one abandoned house to another with the couple who allegedly took her from her father. One day, however, the couple just left Yulia near the train tracks of the town she was in. Apparently, a great deal of people simply walked past the little girl sitting alone on the train tracks and did absolutely nothing. Yulia says that this inaction of these strangers is one of the greatest pities of the entire situation. Eventually, Yulia was found by the local police who told her that she was in Ryazan, Russia. This little girl had been transported to a town that was over 500 miles away from the place that she called home. In 1999, when Yulia was taken away from her father, it was perfectly legal to cross from Belarus to Russia without going through a passport checkpoint. As you can imagine, however, being so far away from home made it very difficult to conduct a search for Yulia's parents. Police in Ryazan began to search for Yulia's parents. After all, no little girl should be left alone in the middle of a city. According to Yulia, the police had commented on the fact that she spoke with a Belarus accent. Yet, the police never thought to conduct a search for parents who were missing their child in Belarus, they only looked in Russia. As a result, the police search was unsuccessful, and Yulia was placed in a local orphanage. Life in the orphanage can be lonely for anyone, but especially for a young girl who knows that her parents are out there somewhere. Luckily, Yulia did not end up staying there too long. About 5 months after she was found, a young Russian couple living in Ryazan adopted Yulia. Irina and Oleg Gorina, who already had 2 sons in their life, wanted to add a daughter to their family. Although they were not Yulia's biological parents, Irina and Oleg deeply loved and cared for the girl. Although Viktor and Ludmila feared the worst, they never stopped looking for their daughter. The couple would even take the same train route between Minsk and Asipoviki back and forth in the hopes they would discover their daughter. They checked water wells, shops, deserted houses, and any other place you could think of. Viktor and Ludmila tried absolutely everything they could think of in hopes of finding their wonderful daughter. They did what any other parents would do, and for years, they never stopped trying. Everyone's a suspect. Police in Asipoviki were searching for Yulia as well. Unfortunately, as with every case, every person must be considered a suspect, and Yulia's parents were no exception to this rule. The police suspected that Viktor and Ludmila had actually done something their own daughter. As recently as 2017, at which point Yulia had still not been found, the police took the parents in for a lie detector test. Obviously, Because they had not ever harmed Yulia, they both passed the test. For 2 whole years Viktor and Ludmila after Yulia's disappearance searched from their hometown, but eventually the memories of their daughter just became too painful. Every street they would walk on, or any train that would go through the Asipoviki station, the couple was sadly reminded of the daughter they had lost. Eventually, they decided they need to move. They packed their bags and settled in a new place that was a little over 30 miles away from Asipoviki, Mariana Horka, a place that would not remind them as much of Yulia every day. After Yulia was adopted, she officially became Yulia Gorina. She spent the days running in the streets and playing with her 2 brothers. She was happy. Eventually, Yulia grew up and took an interest in boys, and she found Ilya Kryakov. Although Ilya was 7 years older than her, Yulia found that she really connected with him. Throughout the entire process of falling in love with Ilya, Yulia never stopped looking for her real parents. They were always on the back of her mind. Yulia and Ilya had been dating for a little while and Yulia knew it was time to tell her boyfriend what had happened to her when she was a child. Yulia was nervous to tell him, but when Ilya found out he was extremely supportive. In fact, Ilya helped Yulia on her quest to find her biological parents. Together, they expanded their search. Before, nobody had thought to look for parents who had lost their children in Belarus, only in Russia. Ilya, however, did some creative thinking. Because Ilya thought to expand the search to more than just Russia, he ended up finding Yulia's parents. Ilya found an old newspaper article that Viktor and Ludmila had posted years earlier. There were so many similarities between the story in the newspaper and Yulia's story that Ilya knew he had found a match. At first, Yulia tried reaching out to her biological father, Viktor, on social media. Unfortunately, Viktor was not very tech-savvy and he never responded. Ilya and Yulia then decided to reach out to the police in Belarus. Instead of messaging Viktor, Yulia could have easily called them, but she didn't. Yulia was way too nervous to talk on the phone to her biological family. The police, however, did manage to get a hold of the Moisenkos, and they let Yulia know that her parents would be calling her shortly. Yulia was full of nerves, she was very excited, but also very scared. Finally the phone rang, and Yulia answered it. On the other end, a woman said, "Hello, my name is Nadia. I am your big sister." After Yulia was done speaking with her big sister, Nadia, the moment had arrived for Yulia to talk to Ludmila. Nadia passed the phone to the girl's mother, and, apparently, Ludmila burst into tears. She was so overwhelmed with happiness that she couldn't speak. In due course, the weeping mother gained control over her emotions and said hello to the daughter she thought she had lost forever. She asked Yulia to give the biggest thank you to her foster parents for taking care of her all those years. The next step, of course, was to finally meet in person. Yulia and Ilya hopped on a train and went to Mariana Horka, the place her biological parents had moved to. The reunion took place in the local police station, and everyone was in tears. Apparently, no one was able to talk, they only cried and hugged each other. Viktor and Ludmila told Yulia that they never stopped searching for her, and that although it was hard at times, they never gave up hope that they would find her. The family left the police station and went back to Viktor and Ludmila's home. Ludmila could not stop hugging that daughter that she finally had back in her life. The happy mother, wanting to make up for the years Yulia had been gone, even had her daughter sit on her lap. Everyone sat around the table drinking tea, laughing, crying, and telling stories about the lives they had missed out on. It wasn't until 3 in the morning that Ilya and Yulia headed back to Russia. After the initial reunion, the police had to make sure everything that followed was conducted in an orderly way. Indeed, the record needed to be rewritten to say that Viktor and Ludmila were legally Yulia's parents, even though at this point Yulia was a legal adult. The police conducted a DNA test to get scientific confirmation that these 2 parents were technically Yulia's parents. Obviously, the results came back positive. Even before the test came back, however, Yulia had absolutely no doubts that this was indeed her long-lost family. On another one of her initial visits to her parents in Belarus, Yulia had a private date with just her father. Her father, more so than her mother, felt particularly guilty about losing Yulia, considering it was he who had fallen asleep on the train all those years ago. Together, they went to the train station in Asipoviki. Viktor explained what had happened those many years ago, and about his level of exhaustion. Viktor wasn't trying to excuse what had happened on the train, he just wanted to give Yulia the truth of situation. It was only natural that Victor was feeling specifically responsible for losing Yulia all those years ago. When a tragedy occurs in our lives, we typically look for someone to blame. Victor, however, took on and internalized this blame after Yulia had been taken. At the train station, Victor had tears running down his face as he begged for Yulia's forgiveness. After being reunited with her biological family and being so elated, Yulia of course completely forgave her father. Not only did Yulia gain another set of parents, she also found 2 more siblings. Yulia found out that she had an older sister, Nadia, and a younger brother, Dmitry. Yulia already had her 2 adopted brothers, and so she was particularly excited to find out that she had a sister. Sister relationships are specifically special because there are certain experiences that only girls go through. Today, Yulia is extremely close with her sister, and they talk on the phone, as well as text each other, almost every day. Also today, Yulia still resides in Ryazan, living very close to Ilya and her adoptive parents Irina and Oleg. Yulia even has her own daughter, Kristina, who she absolutely adores. While this town in Russia is rather far from her biological parents, they are constantly in communication. Yulia understands the importance of family and all of the love and joy that comes along with being together once again. After 20 years of searching, this young woman was reunited with her family that she thought had lost. Truly a happy ending. You know what they say, the more the merrier. That's exactly Yulia's perspective when it came to making her family twice as large. Of course, Yulia's adoptive parents, Irina and Oleg, will always be the ones who raised. They instilled the type of values in Yulia that only can come from parents. Nevertheless, despite not truly knowing them, Yulia feels a natural connection with her biological family. She officially can call 2 women on this planet mom, which makes her feel very lucky. With the news that Yulia had been found after 20 years of technically being missing, parents Gary and Kate McCann have regained some of their hope. Sadly, while vacationing in Portugal, Gary and Kate's daughter, Madeline, vanished. Gary and Kate have been going through the same pains and heartaches as Victor and Ludmila went through. With the news of Yulia's reunion, however, the optimism of the 2 parents has been switched on like a light bulb, letting them know these things are possible even after 2 decades of separation. While Yulia's magnificent journey has, and should continue, to inspire hope amongst those who have lost their children, it's important to keep in mind that it's still rare. In the US alone, there are roughly 25,000 missing children reports filed each year. When you're somewhere crowded, particularly with children, it's very easy to get lost in the hustle and bustle. Always be sure to be aware of everything that's happening around you, and if you want to take a nap, it's okay. Just make sure someone else is there, too. While we would never go so far as to say that Yulia going missing was an act of fate, there does seem to be some sort of greater plan in existence. Yulia was able to bless a family in Russia who had always wanted a little girl with her presence in Ryazan. It's also probably fair to say that Yulia would have never met her boyfriend, Ilya, if she hadn't been taken away by those 2 strangers. It just may be that everything does, indeed, happen for a reason. Disclaimer: some photos may be stock images used for illustration purposes only. The people or places in these photos are not to be associated with the article.